Chosen one, I need you to notice something before you decide whether this message is for you. I am not going to tell you that nobody else can hear it. I am not going to pretend I know the exact date your life will change. What makes this private is something far more personal. There is a question you have been carrying that almost nobody around you knows you are asking. How can I feel this close to becoming someone different and still keep waking up inside the same patterns? You have learned more. You have become more aware. You have noticed signs and moments of clarity that felt impossible to ignore. Sometimes you knew exactly what needed to change. Then morning came. The noise returned. The hesitation returned. The old pattern survived another day. After enough repetitions, something dangerous can happen because you stop questioning the pattern and start questioning yourself. Maybe I am lazy. Maybe I missed my moment. Maybe I am not as intuitive as I thought. But there is another explanation. What if you do not need another signal? What if the signal was never the main problem? Imagine sending a clear message again and again to a receiver filled with static. Would making the message louder really solve the problem? Or would you eventually have to examine the receiver? Hold that question. It is the thread running through everything you are about to hear. This is where the phrase meant for one person begins to make sense. It does not mean the world has been excluded. It means only one person can do anything with what you hear today. You. Nobody can make the decision you keep postponing. Nobody can cross this private threshold for you. You may already know which threshold I mean. There is a conversation you need to have, a boundary you need to set, a project you keep circling, a choice you keep reopening even though one answer quietly returns every time. Then you search for another message, hoping one more sign will remove the fear. Ask yourself something simple. How much more confirmation would actually be enough? If 10 signs have not made the decision for you, will the 11th one do it? There is a point where waiting for certainty stops protecting you and starts protecting the pattern. This is the private threshold. It is not proof that you were selected above everyone else. It is the moment when recognition has to become responsibility. You can keep receiving. You can keep understanding. You can keep feeling that something is coming. But none of those things automatically means you are moving. Expectation can become a hiding place. You can feel close to change for months while the one action that belongs to you stays untouched. Receiving is not moving. Knowing is not crossing. Some messages may have helped you survive seasons when you had no language for what you felt. Some signs may have reminded you that life could still become different. But survival and movement are not always built from the same strategy. So make a commitment now. Do not promise to transform your whole life tonight. Just choose movement over endless confirmation. If that feels true, right? I choose movement. Naming a decision can make it harder to hide from it. Now, we have to go deeper. If awareness is not the real problem, why does movement still feel so difficult? Why can a person know, feel, and understand so much, then wake up tomorrow and repeat the same pattern again? There is a reason the next sign can feel so powerful. For a few minutes, it gives your uncertainty somewhere to rest. You hear the right words. The future feels possible again. Then the feeling fades, and the same unanswered decision is waiting for you. So, you search again. Another message, another reading, another prediction, another moment that seems perfectly timed. The cycle can feel spiritual, but sometimes it becomes a way to delay the discomfort of choosing. Guidance can support movement. Guidance can also become avoidance when you use it to escape responsibility. I am not telling you to reject intuition. I am not telling you every sign was meaningless. Some moments may have carried real value for you. But what helps you survive one season may not move you through the next. Think about the last insight that truly hit you. Maybe you knew a relationship was draining you. Maybe you saw the work you actually wanted to create. What happened next? Did you take one concrete step, or did you immediately begin searching for more certainty? This is where many chosen ones get trapped. They confuse emotional intensity with forward motion. A powerful feeling can be real, but it is not the same as implementation. You can feel seen by every word. You can still wake up and repeat the same behavior. The problem is that insight was never given a job. It arrived, inspired you, then floated away. So, use one simple rule. When an insight matters, give it one real action before you consume another message about the same issue. Keep it small. Send one email, write one page, make one appointment, remove one distraction, say one honest sentence. You do not need a dramatic leap. You need evidence that inner recognition can produce outer move. This is not punishment for seeking guidance. It is integration. Insight does not end when you feel something. It begins when behavior changes. That is how awareness becomes useful. Now the question changes. You stop asking, what else do I need to know? You begin asking, what have I already learned that I have not embodied yet? That question can feel uncomfortable because it removes the fantasy that one perfect message will make the choice effortless. But discomfort is not always a warning. Sometimes it is the sensation of leaving a familiar loop. The old loop says, wait until you feel completely certain. The new pattern says, take the smallest honest step that your current clarity can support. Try something now. Bring one delayed decision to mind. Do not solve your entire future. Just notice what your body does when you imagine taking the next real step. Tightness may appear. Resistance may appear. That reaction does not automatically mean the step is wrong. You may discover that you were never waiting for information. You were waiting for fear to disappear first. And fear rarely gives permission before meaningful change. Sometimes action has to begin while uncertainty is still in the room. So the first pattern is closing. You may not have a guidance problem. You may have an integration problem. More signals cannot automatically solve that. The missing bridge is what happens after the moment of knowing. But there is another group who already understands this. They take notes, they make plans, they can explain their patterns with incredible precision, yet still overthink the next move. Why can people who understand so much stay stuck so long? This is where the second pattern begins. Some people are not short on insight at all. They have journals full of it. They save videos. They understand their triggers. They can describe why they react the way they do, yet the same reaction still appears. That can be deeply frustrating. You tell yourself, I know this already. You understand the lesson intellectually, but understanding alone does not guarantee that behavior will follow. Information can create relief. It can even create the feeling that progress already happened. When a realization lands hard, your mind can experience completion before your life has actually changed. You finally have an explanation. For a moment, that understanding feels like movement. Then reality asks for repetition, practice, and a different choice. This is the insight-action gap. It is the distance between what you can explain and what you can consistently embody. Sometimes it grows because you keep adding information faster than you can integrate it. Think about how easily this happens. You hear one idea that could change your week. Before you test it, you consume 5 more. Another voice gives you a different method. Your mind becomes full, but your behavior never gets enough quiet repetition to become different. Information can comfort you. Integration changes you. So the answer is not always more discipline. It may be less input. It may be choosing one useful insight and staying with it long enough to become visible in your actions. Ask yourself something simple. What do I already know that I have not embodied yet? Do not answer with 10 things. Choose one. Maybe you know a conversation cannot be delayed forever. Maybe you know your attention is being scattered every morning. Now give that insight a practice. Not a promise, not a perfect plan. A practice. Something small enough to repeat when you are tired, distracted, or doubtful. This is how you reduce the distance between recognition and movement. I also want to be careful here. I cannot know the exact decision you should make. I cannot tell you when a specific outcome will arrive. I cannot promise one habit will transform every part of your life. But you can still test this pattern in your own experience. When you consume more than you implement, your mind can become crowded with unfinished instructions. You know many directions, but you have not walked far enough in any of them to learn what works for you. More information can sometimes produce more overthinking instead of more confidence. Your past does not need to become proof of failure. Maybe you were not incapable of changing. Maybe you were trying to integrate too many things at once. Maybe every new insight interrupted the repetition the previous insight needed. So, reduce the noise. Pick one truth you already trust. Give it one behavior. Repeat it long enough to gather evidence from your own life. That is where borrowed wisdom begins to become your own experience. The next level of awareness is not endless understanding. It is embodiment. And once you see that, another question becomes impossible to ignore. What if the reason you feel mentally foggy, distracted, or less creative is not that your capacity disappeared, but that access to it became harder? There is a difference between losing your ability and losing reliable access to it. That difference may explain why the version of you that once felt curious, absorbed, and mentally alive can seem so distant now. Chosen one, think back to a version of yourself who could disappear into an idea for hours. You did not need permission to be curious. You did not need proof that an idea would work before you explored it. Your attention could stay in one place long enough for something new to appear. For many people, that version feels far away now. Life became louder. Notifications multiplied. Responsibilities grew. Your attention learned to split itself into smaller and smaller pieces until even silence began to feel uncomfortable. Then something subtle changed. You stopped saying, "I feel distracted." You started saying, "Maybe I am not creative anymore." You stopped saying, "My mind is overloaded." You started saying, "Maybe I lost what made me different." That conclusion can become heavy. It makes every difficult day feel like evidence. You forget a word, and you call it decline. You struggle to focus, and you call it laziness. You cannot enter deep work, and you wonder whether the gift you once felt has finally disappeared. But there is another possibility. Capacity becoming harder to access is not the same as capacity being gone. Think about a room filled with noise. A quiet voice can still exist inside it, but hearing that voice becomes harder. The problem is not always the voice. Sometimes the conditions around it have changed. Your mind also works inside conditions. Sleep matters, stress matters, attention matters, constant interruption matters. The amount of information you consume matters, especially when your brain never receives enough quiet time to settle and organize what entered it. This does not mean modern life stole your genius. It does not mean one habit explains every struggle, but it does mean you should be careful before turning a temporary state into a permanent identity. Dormant is not the same as gone. Maybe you remember how easy it once felt to become absorbed. You built things, you imagined things, you asked questions without immediately judging the answers. You were not constantly measuring every thought against what other people were doing. As adulthood becomes more demanding, many people trade depth for reaction. They wake up and receive input before they have created a single thought of their own. Messages arrive, news arrives, opinions arrive. The mind starts the day responding instead of originating. Then they wonder why clarity feels rare. This is where the next part of the pattern appears. If a signal keeps reaching a receiver that is overloaded, adding more signal may not help. You may not need more confirmation. You may need less interference. And there is a practical reason I am taking time to explain this before I show you anything else. There is an approach built around changing the condition of the receiver instead of forcing more positive thoughts into it. It is simple, it is passive. It does not require a complicated daily ritual. I am not naming it yet. Because if you hear the solution before you understand the problem, it becomes one more thing to collect instead of something you can evaluate clearly. First, you need to understand what the receiver problem actually means. You need to see why a person can feel intuitive, capable, and full of ideas one day, then foggy and disconnected the next. If the signal was never missing, what would it mean to work on the receiver instead? The receiver problem is simple. You can have a useful signal and still struggle to use it when the system receiving that signal is crowded, tired, distracted, or constantly switching direction. That is why clarity can feel inconsistent. One morning you see exactly what matters. By afternoon, 10 new inputs have entered your attention. The decision that felt obvious begins to blur because your mind is now processing too much at once. This is the receiver problem. It does not mean your brain is broken. It means performance depends partly on conditions that can change from day to day. Stress can narrow attention. Context switching can make deep focus harder. Endless input can keep your mind reacting instead of integrating. None of this proves that your ability disappeared. It may simply make access less reliable. Story changes. Instead of saying, "I lost my gift," ask what conditions make my best thinking easier to access. Instead of saying, "I need more motivation," ask, "What interference can I reduce today?" You may not need more confirmation. You may need less interference. Try one experiment before you buy anything, or add another routine. Give yourself 8 minutes each day with no new input, no phone, no video, no message, no attempt to force an answer. Let your mind experience a small space where nothing new demands a response. Do not turn those 8 minutes into a test. You are not trying to create a mystical experience. You are simply noticing what happens when the receiver is not being flooded. For some people, the first thing they notice is restlessness. For others, thoughts begin to settle. A decision becomes easier to name. An idea returns beneath the noise. This can help you understand the mechanism. You do not have to purchase anything to begin changing the pattern today. Now imagine carrying that principle into a real decision. You sit down to work on something that matters. Instead of opening 14 tabs, checking 6 opinions, and searching for one more sign, you remain with the question long enough to hear your own reasoning. You may still feel uncertainty, but uncertainty no longer has to become paralysis. You choose one next step. You send the message. You make the call. Clarity begins to serve action. This is why I will not tell you that meditation failed, or that every audio you tried was useless. Different practices can serve different purposes. The question is whether a tool matches the problem you are trying to solve. If the problem is endless information, another lecture may not help. If the problem is fragmented attention, more content may not help. If the problem is the condition of the receiver, a lower friction approach becomes more interesting. Earlier, I mentioned a method built around that idea. It does not ask you to memorize affirmations. It does not depend on a complicated visualization routine. Its creators frame it as a short way to support a different mental state. That does not make it magic. It makes it something you can evaluate as a tool. Before I tell you what it is, one final question has to be answered. Why does knowing all of this still fail to create movement for so many intelligent people? Because clarity and access are connected, but they are not the same thing. That distinction closes the loop we opened at the beginning. The signal may be present, the receiver may be capable, but if access is inconsistent, insight can still fail to become action. That is where the research path I mentioned earlier becomes relevant. Now we can close the loop. You do not need another dramatic promise before the next step becomes clear. You need to understand why awareness can exist without reliable movement, and why a capable mind can still struggle to access what it already knows. The missing piece is not more information, it is access. Knowing what matters and being able to reach that clarity consistently are not identical experiences. That is why insight can disappear under stress. A decision can feel obvious in a quiet moment, then become confusing after hours of interruption. The truth did not necessarily change. The condition through which you processed it changed. This is what many people miss. They keep trying to solve an access problem with more content. They collect explanations, methods, and predictions, hoping the next one will finally create certainty. But certainty is not always what the system needs. Sometimes it needs a state where useful information can be noticed, organized, and acted on with less internal noise. So, make the problem plain. Endless seeking can delay action. Insight without practice can become another form of comfort. Overload can make your best thinking harder to reach. Those three patterns point to the same question. What helps the receiver become more available to the signal it already has? This matters most for a certain kind of person. Someone who has already tried harder and consumed enough motivational content. Someone who does not need another promise that everything changes tomorrow. Maybe that is you. You are not looking for more hype. You want something simple enough to test. Something that does not require your whole day. Something that can fit beside your judgment instead of replacing it. That is the bridge we have been building toward. The spiritual question is no longer only, what am I receiving? It becomes, what condition am I receiving it through? That question changes your relationship with your mind. You stop treating clarity as a gift that randomly visits. You begin noticing what makes clarity easier or harder to access. And this is where the approach I mentioned earlier becomes relevant. Its creators built it around the idea of supporting a different mental state through a short listening protocol. I am about to tell you what it is. But notice what changed. You are no longer being asked to buy a mystery. You now have a problem you can evaluate and a reason to judge whether the tool fits. You do not need to become someone worthy of clarity. The question is whether you are willing to support the mind that has to carry it. A tool should never become your identity. It should never replace judgment. A useful tool has one job: to help you do something you already decided matters. So when I reveal the method next, do not ask whether it can magically create your future. Ask a better question. Does this give me a low-friction way to experiment with the receiver problem I now understand? If the answer is no, you still leave with something valuable, because you can begin reducing interference today. The signal may already be there. The receiver may already be capable. Now we can finally look at the tool designed around that distinction. Now we can name the tool built around the receiver problem. But first, I want to show you why its creators believe this approach matters. The idea begins with research on the two hemispheres of the human brain, including work associated with Nobel Prize winner Doctor Roger Sperry. His research helped establish that the two hemispheres can specialize in different functions. The creators of this program use that work as inspiration for a broader idea. They describe their goal as supporting coordinated whole brain activity rather than giving you another stream of information. You are not being asked to believe one audio can create your destiny. You are being invited to test whether changing the condition in which your mind operates can support greater clarity, focus, and creative access. The product page shares stories from people who tried the approach. One woman from California described feeling less passive in her own life and more able to reconnect with direction. Her experience is personal, not a guarantee, but it reflects the shift this message has been building toward. A man from Texas described a more practical change. He reported clearer thinking and easier access to ideas in his work. Again, that is his report, not a promise for you. Both stories point toward the same question. What happens when the receiver becomes easier to access? The program is called the Genius Switch. The Genius Switch is a digital 8-minute auditory sequence designed for headphones while you relax with your eyes closed. Its creators call the approach neural sync technology. They describe the intended mechanism as whole brain activation, meaning an attempt to support coordination between the two hemispheres. That is the product framework, not a guarantee of a medical result. The routine is simple. Put on your headphones, close your eyes, relax, listen for 8 minutes. You do not need a mantra or a complicated meditation ritual. If you miss a day, return the next day. The goal is consistency without turning another practice into pressure. This distinction matters. The Genius Switch is not positioned as a generic brainwave track or another frequency video. Its creators position it as a targeted auditory sequence built around their neural sync approach. If you tried other audios before and felt nothing, that does not prove this will work for you. It also does not prove it will fail. The sensible approach is to treat it as a low-friction experiment. This is not for everyone. It is for the person who has collected enough inspiration and wants a simple way to test the receiver idea. It is for someone who wants a tool, not another identity. Now let us talk about the offer clearly. The current page lists lifetime digital access at $39. The product file lists a regular price of $49, so the current page presents an additional $10 reduction. The purchase also includes 4 digital bonuses: a guided visualization, a grocery shopping guide, a classic manifestation book, and a printable 5 habits infographic. The product page states that the purchase is covered by a full money-back guarantee. That matters because you do not have to pretend certainty before trying it. You can evaluate the experience for yourself. The page says the $39 offer may increase. I cannot tell you exactly when that will happen, so do not buy because of a fake countdown. Buy only if the method makes sense for the problem you now understand. If you want to look at the Genius Switch, the link is in the description and the pinned comment. Do not click because you fear missing your destiny. Click because an 8-minute protocol feels like a reasonable experiment for the receiver problem we have unpacked. And if you decide not to use it, keep the principle. Reduce interference. Protect your attention. Give insight enough space to become behavior. A tool should support your agency, never replace it. Because the deepest shift is still ahead. The real question is not whether you can find one more method. It is whether you are ready to stop living as someone who is always preparing to begin. Now that you know what the tool is, I want to remove something that often enters at this point: pressure. You do not need the Genius Switch to prove that you are chosen. You do not need any product to earn clarity, worth, or permission to change your life. No outcome is guaranteed beyond the refund policy described on the product page. This is not medical treatment, and it is not a replacement for professional care. It is one optional tool built around a specific idea. The principle remains useful whether you buy it or not. Protect the receiver. Reduce unnecessary input. Give your mind enough space to process what you already know. Then turn one useful insight into one visible action. Because there is a deeper pattern beneath everything we have discussed. Some people become so skilled at seeking that seeking becomes their safest identity. They are always learning, always preparing, always waiting for the next confirmation. Seeking can feel noble. It can even look like growth. But if every answer produces another search instead of a decision, the search itself may have become the place where you hide from choosing. Think about how subtle that is. As long as you are researching, you do not have to risk being wrong. As long as you are waiting for another sign, you do not have to face the uncertainty that comes with committing to one direction. This does not make your past searching meaningless. It may have carried you through confusion. It may have helped you build language for experiences you could not explain. But a bridge is useful because you eventually cross it. This is the END of seeking. Not the end of curiosity, not the end of prayer, learning, or reflection. It is the end of using those things to postpone a step you already know belongs to you. You do not need a new life before you can move. You may need better access to the person who is already here. The person who can choose, the person who can focus, the person who can take one honest step without seeing the entire road. So choose one delayed decision. Ask 3 things. What do I already know? What am I afraid of? What is the smallest, reversible step I can take next? Do not demand certainty from yourself. Demand honesty. Now picture a normal morning. Nothing supernatural happens. Your phone is still there. Your responsibilities are still there. But you do not begin the day by handing your attention to everyone else. You give yourself space. The noise is lower. One priority becomes visible. You begin before the world has a chance to scatter you into 10 directions. That may look ordinary from the outside, but internally, it is a different life. You are no longer waiting to feel transformed before you act. You are creating conditions where clarity has a chance to become movement. If the 8-minute genius switch protocol feels aligned with the experiment you want to make, the link remains in the description and pinned comment. That is the last thing I need to say about it. Because the final part of this message is not about a product, it is about the phrase that brought you here. This was meant for one person, and now you are ready to understand what that actually means. This was always about one person, not because everyone else was excluded, not because the universe hid this message from millions of people and placed it only in front of you. It was about one person because there is only one person you can choose for, yourself. No one can integrate this for you. No one can set the boundary for you. No one can protect your attention for you. No one can make the call, begin the work, or step through the threshold on your behalf. That is why the title had to feel personal. The real question was never, was I chosen? The real question is, now that I know, will I choose? You have seen the private threshold. You have seen how another sign can become another delay. You have seen the insight-action gap. You have seen the receiver problem. And you have seen something else. Dormant is not the same as gone. The part of you that could focus deeply may not be dead. The part of you that could create freely may not be gone. The part of you that trusted one clear thought long enough to act on it may still be waiting beneath years of noise. So I want you to do one final thing. If you are somewhere safe, close your eyes for a moment. Let your shoulders drop. Take one slow breath. Imagine a door in front of you. There is no lock. There is no gatekeeper. There is no countdown above it. You are simply standing there, waiting for one final sign that says you are allowed to move. Now notice what changes when you stop waiting. Place a hand over your chest if that feels natural. Say this quietly in your mind. I do not need infinite confirmation to take one honest step. You do not need to know the whole road. You do not need to guarantee the outcome. You do not need to become fearless before you begin. You can honor what you already know. You can stop confusing searching with movement. You can create conditions for clarity. You can choose one next step. The signal can point. The receiver can become clearer. But only your actions can turn recognition into a lived direction. Maybe that action is small. One conversation, one page, one application, one boundary, 1 hour protected from distraction. Small does not mean meaningless. A threshold is crossed one step at a time, and if you want to experiment with the Genius Switch as an optional 8-minute protocol, the link is in the description and pinned comment. But remember what matters more than the tool. A tool cannot choose for you. So when this video ends, resist the urge to immediately search for another message telling you what comes next. Give this one enough silence to become useful. Ask yourself one question. What is the next honest step I already know how to take? Then take it. If you want to mark that decision, write, I choose the next step. Perhaps that is why this message had to feel private. Because the final decision was never between you and the world. It was between the person who keeps waiting for one more sign and the person inside you who finally knows that one honest step is enough to begin.